Live from London, this is the Iran War Today on BBC News. Over the next 15 minutes, we'll bring you all the key updates on day 33 of the war. Well, let's start with today's main developments. Donald Trump says the US will end its war with Iran in the next 2 to 3 weeks, with or without a deal. Iran denies Mr. Trump's claim that asks for a ceasefire, as the president suggests the US is weighing whether to pull out of NATO. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the UK will host a meeting with dozens of countries this week on opening the Strait of Hormuz. Global stock markets rally and oil prices dip following Mr. Trump's comments. Well, Donald Trump has signalled once again that the war with Iran could be over in a couple of weeks, with or without a deal with Iran. He said the US had already accomplished its war aims, including regime change and limiting Tehran's ability to build a nuclear weapon. But Mr. Trump also said that the US will continue to attack Iran until the Strait of Hormuz is open. He claimed Iran's new regime president has asked for a ceasefire and has threatened to pull the US out of NATO over the war. Have a listen.
Iran doesn't have to make a deal, no. Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of people. It's a new regime. They are much more accessible. No, they don't have to make a deal with me. When we feel that they are, for a long period of time, put into the Stone Ages and they won't be able to come up with a nuclear weapon, then we'll leave. Whether we have a deal or not, it's irrelevant.
Well, I speak now to our chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue. So, Gary, a lot of claims made by Mr. Trump there in the past 24 hours or so.
Yeah, and not all of them necessarily sit well together. I mean, today we've had him suggesting that he would accept a ceasefire with Iran if it opened the Strait of Hormuz. Yesterday, he said that was a world problem. That was a problem for the world, that NATO allies could go and get the oil if they wanted it. He didn't really care about that. That now seems to be an absolute prerequisite for any kind of peace. He's also said in the past that they're close to a deal, they want to do a deal. Now he says, I don't care whether there's a deal or not. Also extraordinarily, I think, he made it clear in an interview to a news agency, the Reuters news agency, this enriched uranium, of which the Iranians have 440 kilos, up to 60%, that can get to weapons grade pretty quickly, buried underground after last year's bombing. The president says he doesn't care about that because it's buried underground. And that was one of the key demands that they have been talking about during these negotiations, potentially even sending in ground troops, the rumours were, to get that material and take it out of Iran. That seems to be off the table. Also saying that they may have, he feels they may have neutralised the proxies that Iran has in the region, like Hezbollah, like Hamas, like the Houthis in Yemen, of course. Well, there's no real sign that the Houthis have been neutralised, or indeed Hezbollah is completely beaten at this point in time. So there's a lot of things to digest about his statements. They shift, and as the war aims have shifted over the last, as you pointed out, 33 days.
Gary O'Donoghue, thank you very much indeed. Well, Iran has denied Mr. Trump's claim that it has asked for a ceasefire. It has said the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed to its enemies. In a post on X, the head of the National Security Commission in the Iranian parliament said Trump has finally achieved his dream of regime change, but in the region's maritime regime. While President Masoud Pezeshkian has said Tehran has the necessary will to end the war, provided its conditions are met. Well, BBC Persian's Siavash Adalan is here with me now. So how has Iran been reacting to President Trump's claim?
So there seems to be a lot of confusion arising from President Trump's, the inaccuracies in the statement that President Trump made. First of all, Masoud Pezeshkian is not Iran's new president. He has been the president for a long time now. Secondly, it seems like what President Trump said about Iran asking for a ceasefire stems from a statement that he made, that you just quoted. Iran has the will to end the war and then commit to its requirements, provided that those requirements are met. It seems like President Trump took that as a willingness on Iran's part to want and ask for a ceasefire, whereas Iran's condition has been very clear. It had its own counter-proposal to the U.S.'s peace plan. it wants reparations and ironclad guarantees that it won't be attacked again. But inside Iran, even that statement made by Masoud Pezeshkian, Iran has the will to end the war, has been met with a lot of criticism by the IRGC and some of the hardline media. Inside Iran, they've criticized Masoud Pezeshkian for making that statement, saying that that itself provides, gives ammunition to the Americans, or it emboldens the Americans to think that Iran is in a weak position. So it also goes to show the internal rift inside the Iranian regime, and also the very much ambiguous new state of affairs in terms of the decision-making mechanisms in Iran after we had the death of the Supreme Leader and its replacement with the new Supreme Leader. Who is calling the shots? Is it the President? Is it the IRGC? How will they make a decision if it comes to the point where they need to decide whether they want to accept a ceasefire or not?
Silvesh Ardalan, thank you very much indeed for all that expertise. Thank you. Well, global markets have rallied and oil prices fell briefly after Mr. Trump's comments that an end to the war is in sight. But governments worldwide are bracing for severe economic fallout. Many have imposed measures to contain rising prices, as the head of the International Energy Agency warns we're heading towards a major disruption. In Germany, gas stations will now only be able to raise pump prices once a day. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has called on Australians to switch to public transport as fuel tax cuts begin to take effect. And the UK is set to host a meeting of 35 countries to discuss ways of reopening the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's busiest oil shipping channels, which is being blockaded by Iran. With me is our business editor, Simon Jack. So markets, Simon, have reacted positively to Mr. Trump's comments, but governments are bracing for the long-term damage.
Yeah, two different approaches here. Some to try and cut consumption and others to try and protect consumers from the extra costs that we've seen since these hostilities began. So give you a couple of examples. Asia, which is most dependent on energy from the Gulf. You've seen, for example, in Thailand, they've told people to keep the air conditioning higher, so use less energy to keep it down. Take off their jackets at work, simple but practical tips, and also introduced a 4-day working week. In the Philippines, similar measures as well. As you say, Australia has encouraged people to drive less. And in places like Egypt, for example, they've introduced a sort of effectively a 9 p.m. curfew in telling people to keep their to keep lighting down and to drive less where possible. Same in Australia. So those are kind of consumption types of things. So people use less. And on the other hand, you've got people trying to cut the costs to consumers, try and protect them. So, for example, in Ireland, you've seen cuts in fuel duty. You've seen, as you mentioned, in Germany, only being able to raise petrol prices once a day. And Spain, for example, has had a big VAT, spent €5 billion on a VAT cut. So different methods to do different things. One trying to cut the amount we use, other trying to limit the amount we spend. But as I say, most of the, and also some companies are doing the same, airlines in particular, in Asia, some announcing emergency measures, cancelling lots of flights, lots of surcharges being introduced there, less of that happening in Europe.
Simon Jack, our business editor, thank you very much indeed. Heavy strikes on Tehran continued today. The Israeli military launched a wave of strikes targeting infrastructure. Iranian media said steel complexes away from the capital were badly damaged. Tehran residents have sent messages to our colleagues at BBC Persian reacting to Mr. Trump's comments. Have a listen.
To be honest, I felt a bit hopeful last night about the war ending and things calming down. Then I saw that Trump might want to target infrastructure. I'm honestly sick of this kind of contradictory talk.
I feel like I've been in a purgatory for a month. I can't do anything, and everything is up in the air. I'm so tired of the war.
I want them to continue striking. I'm tired of this situation. I want the government to go.
Iran has continued attacks against Israel and its Gulf neighbours in retaliation. Explosions heard across parts of Israel, and Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have all been targeted by Iranian strikes today. Our correspondent Katie Watson is in Doha.
As the US-Israel war with Iran continues. So too does the retaliation from Iran felt here in the Gulf. In the UAE, a Bangladeshi national was killed from falling shrapnel from a drone, one of 35 launched from Iran overnight. In Kuwait, there were fuel depots set on fire at the international airport, causing a huge fire. And here in Qatar, there were 3 missiles launched from Iran. One of those missiles landed on an oil tanker, causing a small fire. And according to a UK maritime organisation, there was another projectile that was left unexploded. Authorities investigating that. In Bahrain, there were sirens that went off. Saudi also intercepting drones. And this is something we're seeing every single day.
With me is our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucette. Lise, we're expecting to hear from the president later on. Do we have any kind of steer about what he's going to be talking about?
Well, as you know from our coverage, President Trump says something almost every day and often more than once a day about the course of this war, when he's going to end it. And for many weeks now, he's been teasing the world, most of all the markets and oil prices, that he's going to end it very soon. He said that on March 9th, I'm going to end it very soon. We've met our military objectives. And now he is saying it again. But this is new, that he's announced that he's going to have this major address. So everyone is thinking, oh, it must be something even more significant. From what we hear, Bernard Duisman, our White House correspondent, he has said that he's been calling around today, and it's being downplayed a little bit, that it will be more of an operational assessment, kind of what we get from the Pentagon, that they've constantly repeated that Iran's military capabilities have been destroyed, that its navy has been all but destroyed, that leaders have been killed. Perhaps he's got something new to mention, but he is under real pressure, as you've been hearing yet again in this program, about the economic shocks around the world, including in the United States. The midterms aren't that far away. So he will be expected to say something. He said this morning it could be wrapped up in 2 to 3 weeks. Whether it will be 2 to 3 weeks, he's teased this idea today about a ceasefire, even though you've heard from Siavash that's not really what the Iranians were saying. And as President Trump likes to keep telling us, he doesn't make up his mind to the last minute. So it's possible this speech may even change in these last few hours.
And in the meantime, he's been sort of attacking the idea of NATO again, which isn't the first time. But how significant is it this time round, do you think?
This has been a constant theme of President Trump, even when he campaigned for the first time in his first term in office, which had begun in 2017. He called NATO obsolete. He called it a paper tiger, saying that it was costing a fortune for the United States. We know now that the former Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg published his own memoir, just how close President came to leaving the NATO military alliance in his first term. This time round, when he's making the threat yet again, he's saying that his decision is beyond reconsideration, because this time he really is furious, because he believes that NATO, other members of the 32-member alliance should have, in his words, automatically come to his defense. But as we hear from one NATO member after another, they're still confused. What is this war about? Collective defense only applies when there's a consensus in NATO, and when one member is attacked, then it's an attack against all. But this doesn't fall into NATO's thinking. I think NATO members, again, most of all the Secretary General Mark Rutte, will hope that once the war ends, when it ends, they will try to again pull President Trump back from the brink.
Lise Doucette, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Thank you. Well, whether you're joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thanks for your time. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the Iran war today.